If you haven't heard of Anchor by Spotify, you got to check it out. I've been using it for my podcast and it's been great. I can edit, I can record, I can distribute it to every platform I need, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's everything that you need to record your podcast in one place. You can use it on your phone app or you can use it on your computer. So you really need to go check it out. You can download it at your app store or you can download it at anchor.fm. Happy recording. Hello, and welcome to EQ Above IQ Parenting with Emotional Intelligence and Healing the Inner Child. My name is Trina Casey, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining me. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Lainie Liberty. She is a best-selling author, international speaker, teen mentor, world schooler, partnership parenting paradigm advocate. I love that. And most importantly, her role as a mother to her son, who she traveled around the world with, world schooling. We had a very interesting conversation about her project World School and where she went with her son and what that meant to their relationship. I too am a single mom, and I have been traveling with my son since he was about 4 years old, once with a partner, now without. And one of the things that I really love is the dynamics that we have built in partnership. And when I read her new book, Seen, Heard, and Understood, Parenting and Partnering with Her Teens for Greater Mental Health, I was very happy that she wrote this book. So many of the ideas on emotional intelligence align with my own, so much great research. And, I got to tell you, the current system of education is not right. I'm sorry. It's been wrong for a very long time. And I love seeing and having people on this show in particular that are trying to break that system in order for better mental health for our children in the future and our inner child, because my inner child also got a lot out of this book. So I appreciate Lainie being here. Hello, Lainie Liberty. Welcome to EQ Above IQ Parenting with Emotional Intelligence and Healing the Inner Child. I am so grateful you could join me today.
I'm so happy to be here this morning, and I love the no, it wouldn't be Atlantic because
I'm in Africa.
you're off the Pacific. I know that. So I'm in Mexico, so I'm closest to the Pacific. So I'm in
the Indian, transatlantic. I'm in the Indian Ocean around that area, and it's cool. I tell my audience about you because I have so much stuff that we're going to share. I am excited to talk to you, tell my audience about you, but tell my audience your version of you.
Yikes, that's a really big question. A really big, like,
what do you do? Why you're passionate about it? And how about that? Yeah.
Sure. Okay, I will give you sort of like the Reader's Digest version. So I am a mom. I'm a single mom. It's one of my proudest and most meaningful roles that I've played in my life and challenges I've stepped into. I'm originally from California, but I am speaking to you from Mexico. I have always been a single parent. I have been the custodial parent, and I've partnered with my son's father before he died, of course, and always had a really amazing relationship. But always I was the custodial parent and the supporting parent and all those things. Mm-hmm. I worked in advertising, marketing, and branding for 18 years, almost 20 years.
Wow.
And for the last 8 of those years, I owned my own agency. And in California, I was one of the first boutique agencies that specialize in green eco branding and advertising marketing. And we also serve nonprofits. And in 2008, the California economy crashed and it hit really hard. And near the end of the year, I knew that I would not be bringing my staff back because I saw my clients drop away one by one. Their budgets were cut. Therefore, they couldn't afford to retain me and my agency.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting in the office, I was sitting at the time with, it must have been 10 p.m. and it was like a Thursday night. And I'm sitting with my then 9-year-old son. And I'm just like, this is stressful. And I
Mm,
looked at him and I said something to him that changed our lives. Before I tell you what the thing is that I said,
mm,
what I heard out of his mouth continuously was, Mom, you're always working. You never spend any time with me. And
yeah.
that just broke my heart into a million pieces. And it really, really was not consistent with what I wanted. I felt like I was working really hard so I could provide because that's what I did. And the reasons, the desires to create a future was really destroying the present that I had with him. And I didn't know how to reconcile those two challenges.
Right.
And so when I was faced with knowing that I wasn't bringing my staff back, this moment of inspiration hit me. And I said to him, his name is Miro, and I said, Miro, what do you think if we just like get rid of all of this stuff and we just go have an adventure? Like, let's put backpacks on and see where the world takes us, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
are you serious? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. He's like, I'm in. And then, of course, his follow-up question was, do I have to go to school? And I'm like, no, of course not. We're going to go travel. And that started what was to be a 1-year trip. That was 14 years ago.
Wow.
And well, we still haven't gone back to the States to live. We've been back to visit, but just
Yes.
not to live. So that hasn't changed for us. And
Mm,
that was really the birth of so many things. I spent a lot of the years before I had my son
mhm.
and as a very young mother, learning about attachment parenting, I previous to being a parent, I did a lot of reading and a lot of investigation into self-healing. I grew up with a lot of trauma, and part
Yeah.
of my trauma response was hyperindependence, which brought
Yeah.
me to travel a lot when I was in my
Yeah.
20s. Traveled all over Europe and hitchhiked and had such
Yes.
amazing adventures. So the hyper independence served me in many ways throughout my life, but until I started to reconcile and unpack the independence as a trauma response, I didn't actually come to, integrate that into something that was really meaningful and powerful for me versus a running away from something. So
Yes.
the hyper independence really propelled me into a path of self-healing, and I did a lot of investigation and reading
Mhm.
and listening to podcasts and so forth about attachments, about healing traumas, about inner child wounds, about
Yeah.
emotional intelligence. And my absolute intention before I became a parent and when I got pregnant was, I am going to heal these generational wounds. I
Yeah.
am
Beautiful.
not going to repeat them. I am going to be healed and raise my child with authenticity and connection. And
Mm.
that was my mission. So the statement from my son, the you never spend time with me, was, triple
It's
devastating
like a
because it was
knife in the heart. Yeah.
like knife in the heart, then turn it to the right, then turn it to the left, and then like change the
Yes.
direction. Like it was
Yes.
so incredibly painful because it was the antithesis of what I wanted, but I
Right.
didn't know how to go about it. So the
Right.
opportunity that presented itself really was the catalyst, but it was really through the intention of desiring and really deep connection. And I didn't want to miss out on the next 9 years. I missed out on the first 9 years. I really wanted to be there.
Yes.
So the 1 year trip planning, which turned into 14.
14 years.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it came with a lot of intention behind it. I wanted to, we spoke about being partners on this adventure. I wasn't going to be the boss. We were going to make all the decisions together. We were going to
Yeah.
trust our intuition. We weren't going to live with plans or rules. We were
Mhm.
going to live, in alignment with our values. We were
Mm.
going to be present every day, and we were going to allow ourselves to be lazy if we wanted it, because we didn't have any of those things in our conventional life. And
The-
that's when the transitions happened.
And it's beautiful to hear that. Like, you have this beautiful book that you sent to me. Thank you, by the way, that I started reading it. And tell the audience it's, was it seen, heard, and understood? Is that what it is?
It's right here.
Yeah.
It is
And
exactly just
yeah,
that.
exactly. And as I was reading it, first of all, your son Miro wrote the forward, and I thought that was just so touching. I got teary eyed. I was like, "Ah, I hope my son feels that way about me later." And actually, I think I know he does. We've had a tough road as well. And I'm the main custodial parent. I had a decent co-parenting relationship for a while that has just recently deteriorated. But I can't control everything in that situation. So I just focused on him and I and building that dynamic that you were talking about that you have with your son. And we're going on year 6 or 7 of living out of the United States, almost 8. And of course, I was in Europe. So he did the school thing a bit. And I really regret that now because he got bullied so badly because he's biracial and we were living in Amsterdam and don't believe the hype. I don't believe the hype. The education system is not where I wanted to be. The social, emotional piece is not really there. And so I had to change schools to try to find a place for him to fit. And then COVID hit. And then we ended up here in Mauritius. And I'm so grateful for that because this little island near Madagascar is just this melting pot of people who look like me, you, and everyone else. So he is just like perfectly fits in there as I call him my mocha latte baby. And he just fits in there. And he's finally kind of thriving emotionally. They gave him a safe space to be afraid, to have anxiety, but embraced. And it's interesting because that's not what I expected, but I'm grateful for it, for the type of school it is. I was, but I really wanted to homeschool, like out school. I love outschooling. I love the concept behind it. I love that you've done that with your son and how he's developed into the young man that he is through that experience, because I think that the patriarchal systems are devised to make us dislike and hate ourselves, and especially young men, young
Yeah.
boys. And to get him out of the United States and away from that, paradigm was is my goal, was my goal. And so it was so great reading in your book, seeing how much our experiences and our ideology mirror each other.
I
It's
am
just
so honored. I love
it
that.
really. I mean, we're both from California too. That's the crazy part. I,
Yeah. Yeah, I
uh,
love that. And I think that's partially the reason why I wrote this book. And one of the first things I say is, look, I don't have a string of letters behind my name, but I've lived this experience and I'm a self-directed learner and I've compiled
Mm-hmm.
a lot of research. I'm curious about the world. I'm curious about everything and I'm very observant.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps me to connect to others because every time I pick up, like I've got stacks of books, like just to my right, I could go off camera and reach them, but they're written by doctors and PhDs and they're dry and they're authoritarian and they're stuffy. And I have to decipher that. And I'm writing to moms. I'm
Yeah.
writing to, look, I'm imperfect. Here's the science. And my book has been reviewed by many PhDs,
Mm-hmm.
many psychologists, and it continues to get reviewed by
Yeah.
people, not just what I have in the book. And they all say your science is solid.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You've been able to communicate these really tough concepts in a really easy to digest way. And that's my gift to other
Yeah,
parents.
yeah. When you get it, when you already have that type of like, my brain already downloads like that. I always call I'm the undiagnosed neurodivergent person who remembers being the kid that wanted to take the radio apart so I could see how it worked and then see if I could put it back together
I
exactly
love
how I took it apart.
that.
My brain works that way. So I'm constantly in that way too. I'm a critical thinker and I'm always questioning as a Buddhist anyway. I question everything. So I'm not a very good drone, as I would say. I'm not a good drone. I've never fit in. I've masked very well, but I've never fit in.
I have a section in my book about that too, about masking and archetypes. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how much we're all doing that. And, I talk on this podcast and I also talk with my clients about one of the things that psychology fails to recognize and do as I was studying to get my clinical psychology degree, which I didn't finish because a little bit more halfway through it, I felt it was all not wrong, but was coming from the wrong lens of how we victim blame the victims of a macro problem. We try to like micro all these issues, whether it's narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar, or whatever the condition is, it's actually a symptom of a much bigger problem. And they've kept that little box within the family or a few predators outside getting in, but not the macro, the whole of the system.
I totally agree with you. And I am a conceptual thinker, but I can integrate systems thinking into that to
Mhm.
help it give it sort of scaffolding or make it make sense. So I've
Yes.
got a framework, and we're talking about a very when whenever I talk to people here in Mexico about why I'm not in the United States, I say porque la cultura es
Pura.
enferma. It's sick.
Sick.
There's an illness to it. And it's an overarching illness where, we don't look at our humanity. We look at the little pieces we identify. This is why the divisiveness in the United States is absolutely possible because it's
Yeah.
touching on these wounds. And
Yes.
there's also a very high rate of fear programming and scarcity programming. And
Right.
all that stuff is cultural. So why do you have people addicted to drugs? Well, it's because they're not connected. Why do you have high crimes? Why do you have all of these problems that we can look at is they're not connected to self and connected to one another because we're too busy looking at the differences and being afraid. And that's BS.
Absolutely.
That
It's,
that's
it's
the problem.
and it's so crazy because all of that is piggybacked on a for-profit model of
Yep.
capitalism and that mental illness. I always say that the culture in America in particular, but I would say also Western countries, is narcissism. It's like so manipulative. Like everything that you described is all a manipulation to get to one goal, power and money. And there's only a handful of families that actually have any power and major money. That's the part. And everyone else, it's all based on a feudal European system. And everybody else are serfs.
Yeah, but how do you keep serfs complacent or happy? Is you give them what we've framed as quote unquote the American dream. The
Exactly.
American dream is the belief that you can change your class, when in actuality, you will never be part of that 1%. But it's an aspirational thing, and it's American dream. It's actually the American nightmare, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
sold for years. And coming from the place of working in advertising and marketing for
Yeah.
so many years, I studied Bernet. I looked at the neurobiology of scarcity marketing. I've looked
Yeah.
at
Fear.
how it's all fear-based, and I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
do that anymore. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason. Like, I had this cognitive dissonance. I didn't resonate with the work that I was doing anymore,
Yeah.
even though for the last 8 years of my career I was focusing it on green eco companies and nonprofits.
Yeah.
Still, same techniques, same expectations, same BS, and I just didn't want to be a part of
Yeah.
that system
Yeah.
anymore. So I hear you.
It's hard too, because the system is still, rooted in this place, and we still have to provide for our children, and we still need to provide for ourselves. So it's kind of like trying to find a place to navigate as we try to awaken everyone. I call it the grand awakening. And I do see something happening, which I think they inadvertently started with their desire to put people in fear with COVID. So make everybody go in, make everybody afraid to connect, touch, to be, and then create the scarcity again, so that, the five families can make billions of dollars again. But the difference is, this time people found ways to continue on via the internet, to work remotely. And now everybody's like, why would I go back to the fields when we already proved that we can work, be more productive, be happier, spend more time with our families and our children, and still do the job better than before? And that's especially for people of color, because the microaggressions that we have had to manage and deal with by being in an office environment, it's been a lifetime of just like pain and questioning
I
uh,
can
you,
imagine.
your ability to think, and even when you're at the top of your game, it doesn't matter. It's an insecurity created by all of this stuff to divide on false narratives. False narratives.
Especially in the US. I'm not so sure about Europe. I'm sure there is a degree of that. I don't have that experience, but I know in the US, absolutely what you've just described is 100% accurate. And for me, it's really fascinating being I'm obviously white. I've got blonde hair. But I've been
I
living
feel
in
so do
Latin.
I.
Yes, and we probably have the same bottle, believe it or not, because my natural color is somewhere else. And yeah, probably have the same bottle.
Yeah.
Um, but living in a country, and I don't purport to make this the same by any stretch of the imagination, but the little bit that I have experienced of being othered in Latin America because of my color, my nationality, my race, my hair
Mm-hmm.
color, all that stuff. I have been othered. It's nowhere to the degree of what people of color have experienced in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand what it feels like to some really teeny degree to
It's just not
be
to
othered.
feel good. That's what
It just is.
I'm, the one of the things I think that people mistake, and they make it all about a comparison of degrees. When you don't feel good, you don't feel good. You know what I mean? Like,
Period.
it doesn't feel good for somebody to pick out your difference in your othering. And I don't care what color you are. You know what I mean? I love Jane Elliott's exercise about the blue and the brown eyes. You know, Jane Elliott, she's this little feisty old white lady. And if you've got to watch her videos on YouTube. She's amazing. But
Okay.
she's this teacher, elementary school teacher that went like, she's full on civil rights fighter. And she did this experiment in the classroom where she made the blue eyed kids
Oh, I
less
remember this.
than the brown eyed kids and basically treated them how Black people were treated in America and around the world. And I lived in Europe for several years on and off. So I'm going to tell you it's different, but not different. It's just presented in a very different way. It's almost like when you are in the country that colonizes, they're far more confident than than being in the country they colonized. You understand?
I
So
understand.
yeah, so it's kind of like a less of a worry. Who cares? You know what I mean? Deal with it or leave. That's the attitude. So, anyways, so back to the kids, back to your program. So you're doing this amazing program in Mexico right now where you work with teens. And what does that look like? What is your goal behind that program that you're doing?
Well, okay, so I've got several programs and I'll back it up a little bit so you've got some background because that's the
Okay.
only way it makes sense. So I said that my son and I left the States for what was to be a 1 year trip that ended up being 14
Mhm.
years, like we're still at it. At 13, our base was in Cusco, Peru, and we fell in love with the place. We loved it. It was a wonderful place to be. And I also had been writing about our journey, blogging about learning, natural learning, travel, partnership parenting, all of these things I'd been writing about.
Mhm.
And people started to read it. It was crazy. I just wrote it so I'd have a record and so that my family back home would see, but people started to read it. And we got invited to speak at our first unschooling conference in the United States. So we flew from Cusco, Peru to, I think it was Boston.
Mm.
And this was years ago. And so my son and that was 10 years ago. He's 23 now. So he was 13 then. We presented about our life and learning and what it looked like and how much we were learning and not, following a curriculum and not trying, but just living, not dividing. The whole concept of dividing living and learning, it just was the same thing. And the fact that we were doing it together was pretty powerful.
Mm.
That was his first exposure to free range kids, right? They were, teens his age running around, doing all sorts of things, gaming together. They were sword fighting. They were doing cosplay, like all these crazy things. He's like, oh my God, my people, my people. And we went back to Peru and he was quite depressed. He was really like, I feel isolated. I don't want to go back to the US. I don't like the consumerist lifestyle. I really love being on the road. I love spending time with you. What do we do? And
Mm.
we mulled it over for many months. And I was like, you know what, honey? Why don't we just bring a group of teens here and facilitate a learning community? So you've got community, you've got it, in these spurts and they're really intense. And then you've got your space again. And he's like, that's a great idea. So together we founded a company 10 years ago called Project World School. And over the last, 8 years, because 2 years we didn't work because of COVID,
Mm.
but we have brought groups of teens around the world. And so I did a deep dive again. I learned everything I could about learning communities, everything I could about the developing brain. I learned about the social development of adolescence. I learned how to conflict resolution. I learned nonviolent communication. I learned about holding space, like all this stuff. I did this really deep dive
Right.
so I could become the best facilitator as possible for these groups of teens. So we brought our first group of teens to Peru that year. And then the next year we brought a group back to Peru and we did this, immersive learning. We dove into archaeology and Andean mysticism and anthropology and history. And we stayed on a farm. So it was ecology, it was
Sounds
conflict,
amazing.
problem solving, all this stuff. So we did that the second year. Then we brought a group to Ecuador and did a surf retreat for a month. And then we did we just started to expand. And so over the 8 years, we were doing 5 to 16 month-long teen retreats a year. Living
Mm.
in community, we've brought teens, groups of teens, like 4 or 5 times to Thailand. We've been to Vietnam. We've been to Cambodia. We've been to Wales. We've been to South Africa. We've been to Greece. We've been, many Latin American countries, and we always package up and produce these wonderful experiences
Oh,
with a
sounds
group
amazing.
anywhere from 8 to 15 teenagers. Incredible, incredible, absolutely incredible.
I can't wait till my son is old enough because now he's just turned 11.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh,
is,
it's a great
yeah,
age.
yeah, woof, it's a challenge though, because he's just at that precipice of like, I'm gonna want to do what I want to do and still, mommy, you know? and,
Good.
and,
It's
and
good.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
he is my partner in crime. We talk about everything. One of the interesting things is that it's become a jealousy point for my ex, unfortunately. And it's such a pity because my son doesn't deserve that. You know what I mean? Um,
Nobody does.
Nobody doesn't. Nobody getting your kid in the middle of your own insecurities and projections. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But you have to have a lot of maturity to co parent. And that you have to get out of your own desires for that other adult's attention, respect, whatever you didn't get in the relationship, you're not going to get it out of the relationship too. And I think it's just like that acceptance that we're not together anymore for a very valid reason. Now let's refocus to the person who needs us both and make sure that is as easy as possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that we take our personal over here, throw it away, and let us deal with that on the side. Don't bring him into it. Don't, all that kind of stuff. But as our inner child always has a conflict with being able to do that. I do a lot of inner child work with people where, and in the emotional intelligence piece too, where I'm trying to get them to such a profound state of self-awareness that they're able to self-regulate right before they go into that reactionary, before they go into that trauma response. But it takes a lot of practice, and it's a muscle that you have to consistently flex because you have amygdala hijacks are real. It's a part of our hardwiring as human
Yeah,
beings.
I write about that in my book, and
Yeah.
and I always get asked, what is the one piece of advice you give to a parent?
Mm-hmm.
And it's practicing to pause. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that muscle you're talking about. It's
Exactly.
pausing. And then, if you started to do the work, and I've got lots of exercises and things in my book to help people pull apart and look
Mm-hmm.
at what's there, why the reactions are those sorts of reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And if the goal is to no longer react, but understand and recognize when you're triggered, and then have the ability, because you've practiced pausing before you go into reaction mode, then you can respond in a manner which is really about creating connection at that
Mm-hmm.
point, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I totally agree with you. Yeah, those are the keys. And actually, those are the skills that I teach teens. I teach teens how to do this stuff. And I think it's really important to start exercising those muscles at an early age, as you call it, right?
As young as possible. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest failure we have to children is the education system.
Oh my God,
We,
don't get me started.
well, you out school, so I already knew we were on the same page for that. I've taught kids all over the world English. I lived in Indonesia where I used to love my little kindergartners. And I remember walking into the school the very first day, and there was a very British male there just trying to get these kids under control. And he goes, "Oh my God, this is going to be your class. So I apologize now. They're bloody monsters," as he said. And I went, "Oh," and I laughed. I said, "Oh, they are. Oh, okay." And I walked in and they're screaming and running around. He's lost complete control. And I just said, "Freeze." And the whole class went, "Go." And I said, "Go." And they went wild again, "Freeze." And so I immediately taught them how to wrangle in their energy through a game.
Yeah.
They just needed the right attention and the permission to be a kid. You know, that fidgetiness that is in all of us, you know, that we have tapered down because we were bad kids. We were told we're bad kids for our fidgetiness, you know. And education system has just been
Yeah. Again, don't get me started. We've got like 6 hours worth of content there.
So yeah, it's just been me trying to figure out a new way to educate and create an education platform that creates safety. And that's why I call it EQ above IQ, you know, because our children are smart. They're geniuses until we unmake them geniuses. And so
I mean, factory schooling is designed to take the individuality out of the person, really
Right.
break their will, and teach them that they must conform and be obedient. And those are the qualities that I do not want in my child. I mean, it might be convenient if my child is, obedient, but
Just a little bit.
but in the greater scope of things, I do not want to birth into this world another obedient person. I want somebody who's going to shake things up. And so be it. If they need to shake things up in the safety of my, co-created family culture that we co-created together, then do it. You're
Yeah.
safe to fail. You're safe to poke and try and figure out boundaries here. Do it here first. I don't want actually obedience in my family. That's authoritarian
Yes.
and not very empowering.
It's not empowering, and it's also doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't teach you how to be creative. It doesn't teach you how to think
I mean, it
creatively.
teaches you how to be obedient.
Yeah, and mediocre. I
Yeah.
noticed the brightest stars, the brightest people, have always been told to conform because they get to pick and choose the stars, whether it's through movies, whether it's through TV, the patriarchy gets to. I just watched the story about Marilyn Monroe, her
Oh, really?
documentary. Yeah. I'll be honest, I was like pretty blonde, white lady. Okay. Growing up, but I also had this attraction to her that I couldn't understand why. And after watching her documentary and realizing she was such a victim, she was such a victim of the patriarchy, of how Hollywood was basically, and still is, the Weinsteins of the world, sex trafficking, and our children are constantly groomed for this type of thinking about women, our boys especially. And I just don't want my son to grow up with that. I don't, the divide between feminism and all that stuff, that's not what I care about. What I care about is a decent human being that sees a female as a person, as a possible friend, to understand their body, to understand those impulses and all that stuff is biological. But I can still look at Becky or whoever and just say, hey, that's my friend. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be like romantic. And I wrote this blog talking about why can't we just be friends? Can you imagine if we lived in a world where male and females, like men, actually like women? Like actually liked women, like to be friends? Because I really think our boys are brought up to dislike the feminine. And therefore, those feelings that are in them, that are feminine, which are natural, the way they move their body, whatever they do, they always have to label it and categorize it as gay, effeminate, whatever. But it's
In
just
culture or society.
culture and
Yeah.
society. Well, they do it in Latin America, they do it everywhere. They're just machismo. And, living in Italy, one of the things that I really loved about Italians, though, they don't have this aversion to the femininity in them. You would think they would, but they're the peacocks. And it's like the whatever they called it, the metrosexual or whatever.
Yeah. That's so funny. I mean, I love the culture of the lady boys in Thailand. That to me was really
Oh, that was
fascinating. They're just such
fascinating.
integrated
Yeah.
into part of society, and lady boys are lady boys, and that's perfect.
It's a
They
part of
work.
human nature, though. That's the thing. I told my son, I said, you never have to box yourself into the man box. You create what it means to be a man for you,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think our sons have the benefit of being raised by single parents, and I think that on in some aspects it's really, really powerful. It's a benefit. Others, there's gaps and holes that we can't do, but
Yeah,
they get to see strong actualized women that are walking through the planet being themselves and doing what they need to do to care for our families and take care of our littles and take care of ourselves, and we're making it work.
right. And also empowering them because I think one of the things that men, young boys are taught to do is even weaponize incompetence, meaning, I don't know how to cook, that's a woman thing. I don't know how to clean up, that's a woman
And
thing.
those words never came out of my son's mouth. That's not part of our reality. It's partnership.
Well, I have to compete, unfortunately, with that mentality of
Yeah.
what roles women play versus what roles men play. And it's very disheartening, that I have to say, oh, no, 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 no. That's just going to hurt you as a man when you grow up because I gave him this scenario. Imagine growing up not thinking in that way, okay? You don't have the divide that has been created. And you meet somebody, and she at first is probably a little unfamiliar with that because she's brought up a certain way. And then all of a sudden, she sees that you're authentically this kind of just ambiguous, open, just caring, loving person, and that you can clean up after yourself. When,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
I love the realization that I have birthed into this world a young man with high emotional intelligence
Exactly.
who is accountable for his own feelings, who can stop and listen to other people's point of view. He's
Exactly.
got that because that was part of our family culture.
Yeah.
That's what I modeled, that's what we did. And that's now the young man that he is in this planet. He brings that into his relationships.
Right.
And I think that's beautiful.
And I love how you said modeling, because I think I say this on my podcast all the time, that you have to be the example. You can't just tell it, you can't just say it, you have to walk it. And if you stumble, you can also say, I messed up. I
Yeah, it's
apologize.
called repair.
It's called repair, exactly, because there is nobody on this planet that's walking in perfection. But most importantly, you teach them accountability when you do that, and that it's not the end of the world to be wrong.
And you know how you do that? You do that by being fallible yourself, and you do that by
Hmm.
being vulnerable, because sharing your vulnerabilities creates stronger connection. I mean,
Yeah.
we know that in our interpersonal relationships, of course. Why are most parents demanding that they're put on a pedestal and worshiped? Why? That to me makes no sense. The illusions that we have about our parents. I feared
Mm.
my mother,
Me
yet I
too.
was made to worship her, but I
Hmm.
feared her. Like that is not connection at all. That is, that created a lot of trauma that I had to heal because it created beliefs about myself and my worthiness. I want to show my son and the world that it's okay to be flawed. It's okay to have stuff that you're dealing with. But unlike somebody with a victim mentality, I'm taking accountability. Okay, so here's my programming. I'm not even going to talk about the blame of that. That's not
Hmm.
important. But the
Hmm.
fact that I've got this programming in the me that I bring into the partnership, every partnership, my
Yeah.
business partnerships, my friend partnerships, my romantic partnerships, I bring that me into it. So I'm accountable for that me, every
Hmm.
part of me, even the shadow me, the inner child me, the parts of me that I disown. That's the me that I bring into this. And guess what? Even if I'm trying to ignore it, it affects the us, the
Hmm.
partnership, the connection. So I'm going to be accountable, and I'm even going to share with you. Here's a gift. Here's a mirror. You take this mirror and you hold it up to me when I'm acting in alignment with the me
Yes.
that I am, and I will see that it's me doing it, not you.
Not you.
But that trigger that's happening in me is the me that I need to unpack and deal with. And guess what? I give tools to do that in my book. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's so interesting. All of every, I mean, like I said, reading your book was like reading my memoir. I saw so much of my own ideology, and I was like, did she just like go in my brain and just
Yes, I
just
did.
everything
I have
down?
to tell you, I did. I
Oh
didn't
my
know you, but it popped into
gosh,
your brain.
downloaded me somehow. It was just refreshing. And I will tell you, as a woman of color, a lot of what we're talking about is so foreign in our community. And that is something where I'm trying to forge forward and remove the slave mentality
Oh, yeah.
from our parenting style, the do as I say type of mentality, and the mother wound that you
Yeah.
spoke of. I have the exact same mother wound. And I
Yeah.
just don't, my son and I had a very interesting conversation about it because we talk all the time. I said, are you afraid of me? And he gave me this weird look. No. I said, not even a little bit. No, mom, I'm not afraid of you at all. Why would I be afraid of you? And I said, I'm so glad you said that. And I started to cry
Oh,
because I was terrified of my mom. I think I still am
me
terrified of
too.
my mother. And that's because of the unpredictability, and also, never feeling enough that was
Yep.
created. And,
Totally.
so I have given my son the license, like you said, with the mirror, to check me,
Yeah.
to say, okay, because I know what traits I have picked up. And I know, like once I get on a roll about certain things, I'll keep going because that's what I was programmed with. And he'll go, Mom, 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 you've been talking about this for 5 minutes now. Your time's up. Okay. As I said, because I give myself vent time. I give him
Yeah.
vent. time. I give him tools, like the tools that you said you give your son that are in your book. If you haven't told, if you haven't noticed by the audience, in the audience, you need to get her book. But, and, one of the things is that I'm a self-published author, and it's so frustrating to have this golden nugget of knowledge that you've lived experience and have it blocked because it doesn't fit the structures in place.
It's hard. Yeah,
it's
hard. I think what helps me in that particular challenge is my understanding that I feel very secure in being an anarchist. And I don't mean anarchy as in chaos. I mean anarchy as rejecting authority or systems that are not in alignment with the values that I hold. And I don't need to conform because I feel that sense of conformity is actually a detriment to our gifts, our individuality, our creativity, our brilliance that we bring into the world. We walk into this planet and we can either inspire people or we can go, hide in a hole. And I would rather inspire people to live their best lives. I'm concerned about people's mental wellness. I'm concerned that they give away their power to people that are undeserving. The power is found within. And I want every child and teenager, adolescent to grow up knowing that. And that can happen through the transformation of parents and our parenting.
Yes, and that's beautiful. I always say we're all just children walking around in adult suits, pretending we have it all figured out while we spread our trauma to everyone we meet, especially our children. And so
let's don't do that.
let's stop doing that. Let's be more conscious about our parenting and how we reparent our own inner child as we're parenting our own children. And it's such a beautiful opportunity. It's not denying your child their own identity, but it's such an opportunity for you to go back and reflect, what would I have liked to be seen, heard and understood? What would have that looked like for me? And am I able to give that to my child right now? And so, gosh, it's been an hour flew by. That was amazing.
Are you kidding?
It is flown by. And it's like, I could keep talking to you because I swear you're like my soul sister. I don't know how that happened.
Totally.
It's kind of freaking me out. We even got the same glasses on.
I love that.
Anyways, once again, tell my audience, where can they find your book, your courses, whatever? Just give everybody the 411.
Yeah. So my book, again, is called Seen, Heard, and Understood: Parenting and Partnering with Teens for Greater Mental Health. But in actuality, it's not just for parents of teens. It's for parents and it's for people who don't have kids too. But it's just framed in that way. You can find that exclusively on Amazon in any country. It's available in paperback as well as in digital format. But I totally recommend that you get the paperback because there's so many tools that you're going to want to use the spaces in the book to fill things out and make notes and so forth. You can also find me if you have a teen who's struggling, who would like to be mentored or take one of my courses. I offered 12-week and 8-week courses, depending on the age of the adolescent. And I teach these tools and I create safe spaces and I do this stuff online. So you can find my courses for teens at transformativementoringforteens.com. And then I'm hoping that I can bring back online soon. We're planning next year, 2023, to ramp up the retreats again. We're producing, hopefully, fingers crossed, one in Mexico, one in Thailand, and we're hoping that we can go back to Japan and produce another trip
You
there.
need to do one here. You need to do one in Mauritius.
Okay, let's
That
do it.
that we
Done.
need to do one here.
I love that.
I've got the context, I've got the space.
All right, we'll talk offline for sure. But I do have another trip coming up that I just announced like this week. And that's for teens. This is through Transformative Mentoring for Teens. It's going to be here in Mexico, and it's a 10-day mental health trip for teens. And we will be doing internal discovery based on the hero's journey. So I'm going to take them through the whole hero's journey, and I'll take them through each of the stages, and they'll be writing their own story. We'll be doing this through psychodrama, theater, dance, writing, art, and it's going to just be a 10-day retreat of just wonderfulness.
That sounds
It's
amazing.
going to be amazing. You can find out that information at my website, Transformative Mentoring for Teens. And if you want to find any more information about me, just type my name into any search engine. There's lots of podcasts and videos and lots of stuff out there. I've been talking about this stuff for more than 10 years. So you can find a massive body of my advocacy for young people and for parents.
And watch her TED Talk with her son. It was really cool watching that. I watched your TED Talk before I called in to interview. Well, you reached out to me actually, which was
I
really
did.
cool. So I felt kind of special. I was like, oh, she already got her TED Talk and she's reaching out to me. I must be coming up.
I love that. Yeah.
You
And the
know?
TED Talk my son and I did in 2016, and it was really crazy. Yeah. The crazy part was they generally do not have more than one person on the TEDx stage. And we were speaking at an education, TEDx education conference. And here we were talking about education and not going to school. So it was really crazy. We, challenged what the norm or the normal conventional thought of education actually was. So yeah, it was great.
it was,
But that was 2016. That was a long time ago. Well, he was 16 at the time, and he's now 23. Did you like his hat?
I like his hat. He's like almost the same height as you already. Like I was just like, and he was so articulate and just,
Such a good speaker.
he really, I was like, yeah, that's she's doing good work with that boy, and I loved it. And great. But I'm so bummed that it's already been an hour, and I'm sure you have other things to do and teach classes and all that stuff. So thank you so much for spending this time with us and
My
introducing
pleasure.
yourself to the audience. And go out and get her book, check her out, and everyone have a blessed day. What an amazing conversation that was with Lainie Liberty. She's a woman after my own heart. I swear her book made me think I was writing it because it mirrored my life so much. And to take that leap of faith, to throw it all behind, is something that a lot of us see as a privilege. But the truth is that I've done it in varying circumstances. And I actually have a great webinar right now that you can go and sign up on my schedule in thisreallifebooks.com. Just click on the coaching tab and you'll see some scheduling options. It's called Escape America, Tips, Tricks, and Mindset Shifts. And the mindset shifts is the most important piece because we've got to change our mindset about how we live, how we treat the planet, how we treat each other. And emotional intelligence is one of the keys that I have been using to shift my own mentality towards all of this mess. This current reality is a pretty sick one, and we have to look at things in a macro view rather than a micro view in order to solve these problems. So I am always inspired by people who are thinking out of the box and, She called herself an anarchist. And I think that unfortunately, and fortunately, we all have to start thinking in this mindset because it's time to have the grand awakening. So again, go check out thisreallifebooks.com, click the coaching tab, look at the different options. And if you are interested in some parenting advice on how to do outschooling, how to do world schooling, as she called it herself, please reach out. I happen to be an expert at it right now. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope you have a blessed day.